Hey everyone, happy Thursday. It's Thursday. You made it to Thursday. Good job. I don't know what you're doing to help yourself get through each week. I know some of us are working, some of us are working from home, some of us are going to work. I chopped down a tree today. There's this tree that blocks it's a small tree, Christmas tree size, I'd say. Blocks one of these windows in our house. So I went after it with a tiny saw designed for, cutting small branches. But eventually I got it out. Patience, hard work, I guess. Ah, boy. What are you up to today? What has your Thursday been like? I wonder. We're almost to the end of the week. Tomorrow, of course, is going to be very exciting because Fridays are the day that we have our guests come join us. And this week, as you know, it's going to be Ash Parsons talking about her book, Girls Save the World, in this one. I'm pretty excited. I saw that Ash is pretty excited too. She's been sharing it on her social media, passing it around to her friends. So we should have some guests joining us too, which should be cool. Let's see. Today, we're going to be picking up at the end of chapter 14. We only did half of it yesterday because it's so long, and it does switch points of view in the midst of it. So that should be good for us to catch up with what's going on with Madeline. And as I said, it's actually a great place to stop for the weekend because it's this sort of turning point in the book. It's the end of the first major, I don't want to say story arc, but the first kind of setup of what's going to be coming. So pretty excited about that and to share that with you today. Dr. Awesome says, well done on the tree chopping. Why? Thank you. The worst part of it was getting the stump out. I think that maybe always is the worst part, but it took some work. Work? Why? Why does there have to be work in the world? Deborah says, hello. Hi, Deborah. Glad you're back. Hello from Steamy, Texas. That's what the Sims say. Steamy. Is it raining? Why is it steamy? I know it's hot. It must be raining. That's my guess. Don't see, we have a variety of people who haven't checked in yet, but we're just going to have to assume they're coming. Oh, that's right. I know they're, okay. A couple people told me they weren't coming today. So they're going to catch up. So hello, all of you who were missing today. Hey, if you're watching for the first time, I am going to give a little just here's what's going on with the book so you don't feel lost. I'll do that in just a moment and we'll jump in. As always, let's see. Today, Madeline's going to have to make a really difficult choice. So be thinking about, for the end of the video, when is a time that you had to make a really difficult choice, a choice that you weren't sure which way you should go? And how did you feel? What choice did you make? Okay, the Sims say it was hot and humid. It rained yesterday. Okay, that makes sense. It rains here, but we're just like, oh, that's life in Oregon / Washington. Technically in Washington. Milena says, hi there, I'm here. Hello. I hope you have your espresso. Jessica says, I have a work meeting. Oh, no. I'll be back to find out what is happening. I hope Madeline and Jason finally see each other in the Sunlit Lands. They do. Okay, we better go find out about that. Yes, let's jump in. So what's happened so far, Madeline Oliver has a sickness that she'll die from, except that a magical being from another world, a guy named Hanali, who's one of the Elenil, comes to her and says, if you'll come work for the Elenil in the Sunlit Lands for 1 human year, fighting these horrible creatures called the Skim, I'll heal you completely. Her friend Jason goes with her. He gets a unicorn and he gets chocolate pudding. That's his deal because he's a goofball. But he really goes to take care of Madeline. And he keeps mentioning that something terrible has happened to his sister, which we're not going to figure out what that is for a bit. But he's with her too. The section we're reading, they've finally met the Skim for the first time and there's a big battle. And during the battle, Jason ends up out there riding his unicorn around fighting people. And when last we left Jason, he was fighting a Skim who had crushed his ribcage in a pretty horrific moment. And speaking of horrific moments, when last we were with Madeline yesterday, what happened was Galenia, who's one of the Elenil, is a healer. and said, let's go walk among the corpses, and took her out onto the battlefield after the battle was done to heal people. And it appears that what she's doing is she's taking badly wounded humans who are on the LNL side and badly wounded Skim, who are the enemies, and taking the health of the Skim to repair the unhealth of the humans. So basically, if there are two people near death, she can cause the Skim to die and the human to be healed. And Madeline does not love this. And Galenia reveals, well, I was hoping that you would end up becoming a healer and doing this yourself. And that's where we pick up actually mid-chapter in chapter 14. And here we go. Let's see, I'll back up a little bit. So we'll pick up a little bit from yesterday. Galenia and Madeline are having a conversation. She's just healed a young man named Ricardo. And Madeline is expressing concern. I helped the Skim wounded as well, Galenia said. Their people have abandoned them. We take them in to the court of Farseeing and rehabilitate them. Give them meaningful roles in the Sunlit Lands. It's more than their foul kinfolk have ever done for them. Something seems wrong about it. Madeline couldn't figure out how to say it, but a sick feeling was in the pit of her stomach, threatening to spread to her whole body. I am a healer, Galenia said. I had hoped you might assist me during your allotted time. To find someone with healing potential is rare among the Elenil, and I see that potential in you. But perhaps you do not have the stomach for it. No matter. Today you shall at least go among the wounded and find those I may help. You want me to find the wounded for you? Galenia nodded once, impatiently. Even if I don't heal them, we must take them within the city walls, agreed? Look for the most egregiously wounded first. I cannot save them once they pass death's gate. Okay, she could do this. She was only pointing people out, people Galenia would find eventually anyway. Or maybe she should run. Maybe she should look for a way home out of this crazy place. Her breathing went ragged just thinking about it. Somewhere there was a gate or portal or closet or painting that would open and land her back with her mom and dad, where Sophia would make her hot chocolate in the morning and pack her lunches, and where Mr. Garcia would smile at her in the sunlit garden as he placed new plants in the black soil. Darius would pick her up and take her to school, and in the afternoon he would read to her. She stumbled, her chest tightening. Her breathing was coming ragged and uneven. The tattoo on her wrist stung. She whipped off her glove. Maybe it was her imagination, but the tattoo looked wider than before. Not by much, but a tiny bit, like it had swollen. Were these thoughts enough to invalidate her agreement? Was the magic removing her ability to breathe because she wasn't serving the Elenil with her entire heart? She tugged her gloves back on. She didn't want to touch anything out here with her bare hands. Well, that sounds familiar to the rest of us, doesn't it? She found a wounded Skim warrior. He was pinned beneath some beast she did not recognize, like an oversized ox. She couldn't tell if the pungent stench came from the animal or the Skim's bloodied and stained rags. The warrior's eyes fluttered open, and when his eyes met hers, his lip curled up in disgust, revealing a scarcity of crooked yellow teeth. Can you hear me? The Skim licked his lips. I hear you, Elenil. I'm human. My name is Madeline. He grunted, or maybe laughed. We're going to heal you. She stood and called for Galenia. Galenia arrived with 5 humans, her 2 attendants, and 3 soldiers she had patched up. She regarded the broken Skim coolly, but she didn't critique Madeline's choice. Instead, she bent over the warrior and said so quietly that only he and Madeline could hear, "What will you do, brave warrior, if I use Elenil magic to save you?" "A pox on your magic," he wheezed. "Darkness, 1,000 years. Darkness for you and your His face contorted in pain and his hands scratched at the hide of the ox. "Pull him out," Galenia barked, and Ricardo immediately took hold of one arm and attendant the other. The other two humans put their backs against the ox and pushed. It wasn't enough to get much movement, and the skim roared in pain. Madeline said, "We could dig him out." And that's what they did. The mud moved easily enough, and with a combination of hands and broken weapons, they managed to get his legs loose enough to tear him away from the dead ox. "His legs and pelvis are broken," Galenia said. "Some minor internal damage. Have you found someone who will balance these wounds?" One of her attendants brushed the hair out of his eyes with a muddied hand. "I have one." They dragged another skim warrior, much worse for wear, through the mud. Madeline couldn't believe she was still alive. She had been cut neatly from the shoulder down, and the wound already stank. Galenia looked the skim over carefully, then motioned to Madeline to join her. "This one won't last long. It is a mercy to her and to the one with broken legs. Do you approve?" Do you need me to approve? "Before we leave this battlefield, I hope to see you understand the work I do. You've chosen this skim soldier to be healed. You must have some compassion for him." The skim had snarled at Madeline, but still, it was right to heal him. Wasn't it? Will it kill her? To fix him? She will die regardless. My magic, remember, cannot pass the gates of death. She will die in an hour, if we let her, or in a few minutes, if she gives her legs to her countrymen. Madeline couldn't decide. Galenia waited, then asked again, "Do you approve?" She couldn't say the words. The groans and cries of the two skim warriors were too much for her. Galenia grew tired of waiting and put her bare hands upon their foreheads. The male skim arched his back and screamed, while the female exhaled once, sharply, and lay still. The black swirls of her tattoos faded, then disappeared completely. The male skim sat up on his knees, his legs and pelvis miraculously whole, and cradled the female's body, weeping bitterly. "Ungrateful creature," Galenia said, disgusted. "May the peasant king welcome you into his court," the skim said, soft and low, into the dead skim's ear. "Better the majestic one than the peasant king," Galenia said. The skim scowled at her. "Do not run," Galenia said, "unless you would have your sister's sacrifice be in vain." The skim stayed near them after that as they combed the field for more survivors. The sun had risen in earnest, and they had wandered far from the center of the battlefield now. The skim soldier winced in the sunshine, which seemed to be physically hurting him. After a couple hours, Galenia had healed perhaps 20 human soldiers and 3 skim, some with broken limbs and a few with more serious wounds. The serious wounds were the most troubling, as Madeline watched the nearly dead succumb because of Galenia's magic. Once Galenia used a badly broken human to fix a skim warrior, but Madeline noticed dark looks exchanged by the human soldiers when she did. Madeline wondered if this was part of a show meant for her to try to convince her that Galenia gave everyone an equal chance. Some of the soldiers were sent back into the city with the skim warriors, but Galenia kept the first one she had healed, the one Madeline had chosen, there in the crowd, finding bodies. Madeline worked her way over to him. His thick, gray muscles were covered in black tattoos that whirled in loops up both arms and over his shoulders. His hair, greasy and limp, hung past his shoulders. He had the smell of someone who hadn't washed in weeks, maybe longer. "I told you my name," Madeline said. "What's yours?" He scowled at her. "Call me Night's Breath." "Is that a common name among your people?" He drew himself up to his full height and hit his chest with one massive fist. "It is my war-skin name, given in my first battle. For when the enemy feels my breath upon his neck, already night has come for him." She helped him move a splintered battering ram off a large hairy creature that looked almost like a goat, with human arms and legs. It had wide, staring eyes. There was nothing to be done for it. Why do you want to bring darkness to the Elenil? Why do you hate the light? Night's Breath spit. He mumbled something to himself, then said, 1,000 years of darkness is a mercy to the Elenil. I would crush their skulls. I would grind their bones. But why do you hate them? Look at the court of far seeing. Isn't the Crescent stone beautiful? In the sunlight, there on the highest tower? Look at the white walls and the colored flags and the bright river winding through. Do you see the palace on the central hill? I've never seen anything so beautiful. It reminded her of the descriptions from the tales of Massalia, the beautiful magical city she had longed to see her entire life. She stopped for a minute and looked at the city, reminding herself of the beauty here, of the good things, of the magic and wonder. Hold, little human, Night's Breath replied. Look again at those far walls. Do you think they would be a thing of beauty to one such as me? What awaits Night's Breath behind the walls of far seeing? He snorted. Death is a better end for one such as I. It was a good question. What would be done with the Skim soldiers? They were prisoners, certainly, but the Elenil would be kind to them. She was sure. Thinking about it, she hadn't seen any Skim in the city proper. She hadn't been here long, though, and no doubt they were in a prison or jail cell. Or maybe they were bargained back to the Skim in exchange for Elenil prisoners? She didn't know. It was a question worth pursuing, she thought, and she promised herself she would not forget to look in on Night's Breath after they returned to the city. The Skim grunted. Look here. Another fallen human. It was a boy in white armor, his chest caved in. Ground to dust, beneath the wheels of war. The Elenil could return what they have stolen from the Skim, and the bones of such little fools need not be grist. But until that time comes, I will kill as many Elenil as I have opportunity. This one looked to be too far gone. Madeline dreaded the thought of touching another dead body. Her heart beat faster. She didn't know how many nightmares she would have in the weeks to come. Let's take off his helmet, Madeline said. She steeled herself. If she was going to walk the battlefield looking for survivors, she was going to make absolutely sure who had survived and who had not. Night's Breath removed the boy's helmet. His black hair was plastered to his face, but she recognized Jason immediately. Oh, no. No, no. She fell to her knees at his side. He had come here because of her. And why was he on the battlefield? He didn't even agree to fight when he came. He shouldn't be here, broken and bleeding. Madeline put her face near Jason's. A faint stirring of breath touched her. He was alive. Barely. She leapt to her feet and screamed for Galenia, who made her way toward them with infuriating slowness. Galenia's bright eyes flicked between Jason and Madeline, and she seemed to know immediately who he was. Ah, your friend. He is grievously wounded. We would need someone in full health, or near enough, to recover him. Madeline's mind raced. Someone healthy? Who would take Jason's place? Take me, she said. It would be worth it, and she didn't have long anyway. Galenia shook her head. Would that it were so simple, child. You are healthy only because of your magic, and you have a contract to fulfill to the Elenil. No, it will not work, though it is noble that such would be your first thought. Okay. So could we help him enough that he could heal naturally? Is there another person on the field, like the last one, who's going to die either way? Galenia shook her head. He is too far gone for that, human child. But there are ways. She turned her head slightly enough that Madeline followed her gaze to see Night's Breath, hunched just beyond the circle of human soldiers and attendants who had followed Galenia. Oh, no. Could Madeline agree to that? She licked her lips, thinking hard. Night's Breath tightened his hands into fists. One of the soldiers, realizing what Galenia meant to do, turned, his axe at the ready. Night's Breath swung one massive arm in a punishing blow, and the soldier flew backward, his helmet toppling from his head. Another soldier moved toward him, but Night's Breath shattered his knee, then broke into a desperate gallop over the battlefield. His life for your friends, Galenia said. Jason's face was almost white. Madeline couldn't tell if he was still breathing. That's not fair, Madeline said. It wasn't fair at all. Who was she to make this decision? She knew Jason, knew him to be loyal and kind, and she barely knew this skim soldier at all, but every indication was that he was a terrible creature, bent on destroying every good thing in this beautiful city. Look at this disgusting field. Dead bodies, ruined war machines, trampled grass, stinking mud. The skim had done this. Not the Elenil. But could she agree to kill him? Her head spun and her stomach turned over. She couldn't make this decision. She couldn't be the judge, the executioner, even if it meant saving her only friend from home. It is precisely fair. What did the beast say to you? No doubt that he would kill us all? That he would rather die than join the Elenil? Blood rushed into her face. He said both those things. They are an unredeemable race, Madeline. Violence and shadow are their meat and drink. They choose death over life, darkness over light, filth over food. And your friend, is he a good man? Madeline brushed the hair from Jason's face. A breath rattled out of him as if in reply. Her hands shook. She waited for him to take another breath. Please take another breath. He gasped, pulling in another long drag of air. Madeline slumped against him, relieved. There wasn't time for this, wasn't time to make this decision. He took me to the hospital when no one else would help. He came to the Sunlit Lands with me. Just because he's my friend. She didn't know if this was a eulogy or if she was convincing herself to do this thing. All she had to do was say yes to Galenia, one simple word, and Jason would live. A noble soul, Galenia said, and you would let him die so that beast can escape and kill yet more noble souls? She clucked her tongue. The human morality is so muddied. Cannot make sense of it. Jason's body began to shake. Are you going to save him? Madeline cried. Galenia smiled, but it was a sad smile that didn't touch her eyes. With your approval, child, I will. Jason's body trembled and his breath seemed to be all exhalation now, a single sigh coming out for an eternity with no sign he would ever breathe in again. His hands were cold, and she tried to unbuckle his breastplate, but it was caved into his body. She couldn't tell where it ended, and Jason began, Can't you just? Quickly, child, the beast is nearly away. Night's Breath was so far now that Madeline didn't think they could catch him if they tried, and every second that passed, he moved further away. Then Jason's body went strangely limp, and Madeline shouted, Yes, yes, do it! Galenia whirled and grabbed a spear from a soldier. She hurled it, and it flew across the field impossibly far, impossibly fast. Madeline didn't know if it was the angle of the light or if the sun glinted off the shard of metal at the tip, but for a moment the spear flashed like a bolt of lightning. It struck Night's Breath in the back of the thigh. He cried out and fell. Galenia's people scurried across the field toward the skim, their weapons at the ready. Galenia herself scooped Jason up from the ground, paying no attention to the blood that spread across her gown. She leapt across the field with the grace of Rondello's stag, overtaking her own people and arriving beside Night's Breath before anyone else. Madeline ran as fast as she could, choosing her footing carefully so she wouldn't fall on any of the broken remnants of the day's battle. Galenia knelt between the two figures, a bridge between the two still form of the crushed human boy and the writhing, furious skim. Let me live, Night's Breath shouted, "Lady, let me live!" Galenia pushed the skim down with her left hand and placed her right on Jason's face. A horrible sound, half scream and half defiant shout echoed across the field. Night's Breath face went slack. The tattooed whorls on his arms and shoulders faded as Madeline watched, and his chest fell still. He looked even more like a beast now that he was dead, his waxy lips falling back from the jutting yellow fangs, the skin of his face sagging toward the ground. It made it worse, almost, to see Night's Breath like that, like he was an animal and didn't know any better, that maybe the horrible things he'd said had all been brute instinct. Madeline's stomach dropped away beneath her, and she fell on her knees beside him. She leaned down beside the skim. She whispered in his ear, "May the peasant king welcome you today." Isn't that what he had said to the dead skim woman? She couldn't remember the exact words. A stinging slap knocked her face to one side. Her own hand flew to her cheek, which burned with the imprint of Galenia's palm. "The majestic one gives you back your friend, and you speak the peasant king's name? Such small decencies should be common sense." "I didn't know," Madeline said. Galenia's gaze did not waver. "Now you do." Jason coughed and his eyes fluttered. Madeline rushed to him. Galenia removed her gloves from her cloak and meticulously pulled them on, straightening each finger. Jason opened his eyes and then focused in on Galenia, who now stood a few feet away, the sunlight catching her pale hair. She looked glamorous and perfect, despite the smoke and ash of the battle, despite Jason's blood on her gown. "I knew it," Jason said. "I've died and gone to Hollywood." Madeline, beside herself with joy, threw herself onto him and hugged him long and hard. "You're not dead." Madeline frowned. Jason frowned. "Madeline?" She laughed and helped him to his feet. He leaned on her for a moment while he got his balance. "I didn't even know you were one of my groupies." "It has been a long day," Galenia said. "Return to your homes, all of you." Jason seemed slow, almost dreamy, most of the way back to the city. He kept talking about his unicorn, needing to find his unicorn. Then he stopped, agitated. "Where's Bailea?" he asked. "Did you see her?" "I don't know who that is," Madeline said. "Bailea. And the burning girl, I can't remember her name. Skula? Something like that." "Shula?" "Yes. They took her, Mads. They took her. And we have to get her back." "They're long gone by now, Jason. It's been hours since they retreated." Galenia looked back at them. "The Knight of the Mirror has given chase," she said. "He will not fail. They will soon be returned to us." Madeline didn't answer. She looked away, pretended not to hear, though she desperately hoped it was true that the knight would bring Shula home. Jason's face darkened when he saw a group of people carrying a skim body between them, throwing it into a large pile. "Something isn't right," he said. Madeline squeezed his arm. Let's get home." "Something's wrong." He stopped short. He stared out across the field toward the ridge the skim had appeared on hours ago. "Does the name Night's Breath mean anything to you?" "Night's Breath?" she asked, her heart beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. Nothing, she said. Nothing, she said to herself, and kept saying it all the way back to the city walls. She promised herself never to tell Jason this one thing, to spare him at least, knowing that he owed his life to a fallen skim warrior. There was a strange squeaking sound from somewhere behind them, like a balloon the size of a van, squealing as air forced its way out. Jason perked up, a glint of light returning to his eyes. "My unicorn," he said. "I hear my unicorn." Madeline turned to see a rhinoceros barreling toward them over the battlefield. She thought it was farther away than it was because it was so small. It was about the size of a golden retriever, and it leapt up onto Jason, knocking him over and leaning against him like an overly affectionate dog. They shrank you, Jason shouted. This crazy magical battle. I can't believe they shrank you. It's good to see you, girl. Good to see you. He scratched her ears and patted her belly. She wouldn't leave his side, practically tripping him as they walked the rest of the way to the city. They passed through the shimmering golden curtain that awaited them at the city's gates. Honnelly met them there with a jovial shout and a promise of a ride back to their homes. He clapped Jason on the shoulder and laughed along with him as he described discovering his unicorn was actually a rhinoceros, saying, "We have always called such beasts unicorns." His carriage came, and Madeline scarcely remembered climbing into it, rhinoceros and all, or the journey to Mrs. Raymond's house. She barely said goodbye to Jason. She didn't think he noticed because two bloodied human boys came rushing up to him, cheering and jumping around and admiring his unicorn and congratulating him on his first battle. Her room was empty. Shula's bed was perfectly made, like in a hotel room, like no one had ever been there. Mrs. Raymond brought Madeline a steaming wooden bowl filled with stew. Madeline set it on the wooden table under the window and sat in front of it for a long time. She kept thinking of the gray-skinned corpse that had been Night's Breath. I did the right thing. I did the right thing, she said to herself again. He was a monster, bent on destroying the world. He wanted only darkness and pain and death, which is what she had given him. Outside, the birds sang, and the sun shone as bright and as clear as ever. The end of part 1 of the Crescent Stone. There we go. We're making good. Here we go. See? On Monday, we'll start in on part 2. There it is. Haha. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming today. I appreciate it. Don't forget tomorrow that we will have Ash Parsons with us talking about her book, Girls Save the World, in this one. Ash is excited to be with us. She actually, I don't know that she's done many live casts before, so that should be new. And then also, don't forget, Tyndale.com is taking orders. If you want to buy a book and you're having trouble finding it at other booksellers, obviously you can go to other places like Indie Bookstore or Amazon or other places too. The Crescent Stone, narrated by Natasha Sudek, is available at oasisaudio.com. And don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. It's always helpful to me, and it helps you keep track of where we are. So have a wonderful day, everybody. I'll see you back here at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern, and then, you can do the math on either side of that one, I'm guessing, with author Ash Parsons tomorrow. Have a great day. Be safe, be well, and we'll see you tomorrow.